Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome today to another version of the Thieves Den. And we're having ourselves a little, it's kind of a story time, kind of a discussion, so to speak. This is like the only time I could actively think of where I will actively talk about religion just as an excuse to talk about mythology and stuff I learned growing up. Well, I mean, shit, I guess stuff I'm still learning about because books are fun. There's a whole lot of reading involved for some of these things, and it's so good. But I mean, yeah, growing up, I was raised. I want to say, yeah, I was say Christian. Like we go to the Saint Baptist, I think. Well, no, that's a lie. Well, it's not entirely a lie. It's just some of my family goes to one of them, some of my family goes to another. It's a bit of a mix and match on whether I go with any of them. And then afterwards, sometimes we go get like little not fajita plates. Like we go to like little Mexican restaurants in the area and get like some plates, like fajitas. Sometimes I'll get wings if they have them, some tacos. And being that most of my family on my mom's side is fluent in Spanish, and I took 4 years and barely retained any of it, like that just goes to show you how much like how awkward it is when they're ordering everything, and I'm just like, yeah, I would like this. I feel stupid sometimes, but again, Duolingo was the thing. I could jump back into it. Hmm. Also, no alcohol this time. Yeah, once again, I am drinking coffee, but unlike before, I am not in a rush. So we can sit back and let today simmer, so to speak, right? I mean, don't worry. Next time I'll have a bottle and stuff ready. It's just I'm waiting on my next check. Just to like properly get stuff going. I'm thinking of getting some chakrams. That would be fun. Ooh, maybe I should order a Halloween costume too. Ooh, okay. The gears are turning right now. Right. A topic of discussion for today. Um, so this is not necessarily because again, there's things I won't talk about during my story time. I'm not going to talk about like current events. I'm not going to talk about political anything, and I'm not going to talk about like religion or like stuff that people tend to use in a sense to divide themselves. I don't like discussing that. I want to discuss stuff where it's like things that I experienced growing up that I usually either found fun or found passion in, or and so on and so forth. This is just kind of tying into that because one of the games y'all have probably seen me play. If not, like I would highly recommend Dante's Inferno. Is it anything like the specific poem/story from way back when? Probably not. I don't think Dante from that story took the Grim Reaper scythe and went on an expedition through hell, facing his demons, trying to save his lover Beatrice. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that game is goddamn punishing, but it is so much fun. Like if you ever hankering for some old school God of War, like I like the new God of War games, but let's be real, I would like the old ones had way more fun gameplay. Like, and again, like maybe it's just, and you can say it's nostalgia. You can be like, oh, you're just saying that because you grew up on that one. You're not giving the new one a chance. I played through the new ones. They were really long. And while I felt rewarded at certain points, like when I finally beat the Valkyries, like all of them, I was so hyped up. I was telling all my roommates to call me the Valkyrie Slayer for at least a good month after that, because that took so long for me to beat. And then, like I said, the gameplay is fun, story was good. The second one, a bit longer. Like I was hooked on the first boss fight against Thor. I was like, oh shit, is this gonna be like all foil? Or we're gonna have to fight him later and make it because again, in the first part, like he's not even taking you seriously. He's just kind of like, okay, like boom. The fact where he straight up kills Kratos, brings him back, and says, oh, I'm not done with you yet, bonk. But then like the second fight is kind of just like because again, I thought I was hoping like it'd be like Baldur, like you know, okay, we're gonna have to fight him at certain points, or we'll see him again at certain points where he's an enemy. I mean, but even then, he kind of get him and the Atreus kind of like formed their own little bond too, which I thought was neat. Sif is y'all remember Sif? I don't really care much for Heimdall, but I do like his like clairvoyancy thing where he can basically see the future and goes like, yeah, he's never taken a hit, and then you can try to hit him with everything. He's just talking mad shit the whole time. It's like, nope, nope, nope. Oh, I should play Azura's Wrath. That's also a fun one. But I'm getting sidetracked. The like the reason I like those old games too is because, like, granted, they take some liberties with certain stories, but some of the characters you get to fight against and even interact with are people from like the tales of those stories. Because I grew up reading Greek mythology. I want to say, was it around middle school? I mean, technically, my first interaction was with the Lightning Thief books, Percy Jackson stories. But I never really read all of them after I read the first two, and then I kind of forgot to read the other ones. And then I started reading the Cirque du Freak ones because I started at the ninth book. I failed that test, went through all of them again. And the only reason I even got the ninth book was because it looked so cool up front. And I had no clue what was going on, so I was so lost in that context of the story. Went through all of them again. We took the test, passed it, and I was like, yeah, retention. But then I started looking into Greek mythology. I started looking at, famous heroes, Perseus, Theseus. They all have the Eus for some reason at the end. All right. And then the movie that I grew up watching too, because it's one of my dad's favorite movies, 300 with Leonidas. I mean, granted, it's spelled differently, but it sounds the same. Y'all get it. Again, really, really fucking good movie. That's like a movie that makes you feel like it hypes you up. You feel like a man after you watch that movie. You got like 300 soldiers going to war, and it's like all slow mo and shit. It's like, yeah. Like, you see this guy ducking with the arrows. They put the shields up, block all of it, takes his spear, breaks the arrows off. It's so good. Manly tears. That's what that is. But, yeah, that was also fun. I played the PSP game too. It's actually really good. And you can upgrade Leonidas, get new weapons and armor. You get to fight creatures that you see in the movie and a whole manner of other beasts. They have like random stealth missions where you go around just taking out soldiers. I mean, granted, you can run through and just kill them all, but like it's more fun to do the stealth. And you get like abilities and stuff. And you're like, yeah, da, 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 da. And it's so much fun. And then you even get to experience more of the stuff from the movies they kind of glossed over because a movie only has so much runtime. And you even get like a little aftermath in the end when you get to fight you get to fight against like not Xerxes but like his upper like his like lieutenant, and you get to fight as the guy who the Spartan who had to leave because he was blinded, and so on and so forth. Those were fun. And there was trying to remember. Oh well, I'm just sorry. I'm just thinking about stuff. Oh yeah, you could throw your spear as a weapon, and then like you'd be fine with your sword afterwards. And you can go pick it up or go pick up a different spear off the ground, and you just catch motherfuckers with it too. Like you see somebody go, you gonna hit me? We take them out. But I got so fascinated with Greek mythology books, I started reading more into them, like actually reading them, not even just the pictures. And I started learning about the stories of like the Golden Fleece and Icarus and his wings, and like the Gorgon, which I would think is a weird like because a lot of those stories I realized growing up after I read them is like, why did this happen? It's like, oh, okay, how did lions happen? Well, a guy wanted to win a race against this fast girl, and they specifically said, hey, he prayed to the gods, and like, all right, here's 3 golden apples. And when she gets ahead of you, you chuck one of these fucking apples at her. She's gonna stop because they're the bright golden apples, and she's gonna pick it up, marvel at it. It's gonna basically stun her for a second, so you can run past her. Here's 3 of them. Do this, and you win the race, and you win her heart, and then she'll marry you. Okay, he did that. And then the way the story described it was like, he forgot to thank the lady, so he forgot to thank. I think it was Aphrodite. because I think that's who he played to. He forgot to thank her, and then she turned them into lions for their pride. Like, I don't even think that was a pride thing. I think he was just kind of like, he forgot to be like, hey, thank you, coach, like something like that. And then she just went, motherfucker, and then lions. And then same thing. It was like, how was spiders made? A lady named Arachna or Arachnid. They were weaving, and people were saying like, oh man, this weaving is like better than that of the gods. And then Athena, who I'm pretty sure was like the goddess of weaving, took that personally and went, oh, like, hold my helmet. I'm gonna go down there. Went over there and was like, okay, so you think your weaving is better than that of the gods? Well, we're gonna find out right now. And they had like a little weaving contest. I don't even know how that's supposed to work. Are we just supposed to sit there for like an hour while they like craft stuff and then be like, oh, okay, like have a judge come out and be like, oh, the stitching on this one is magnificent. But she was like, apparently during this alleged contest, she was like, Athena was losing. And that pissed her off so much that she went into a she basically, they say like she flew into a rage, but let's be real, she was throwing the tantrum. So she runs up, starts breaking the machine, ripping it, and the lady, obviously scared that this god is gonna like murder her, takes off running. She's like, okay, I just pissed off this goddess of war, I'm leaving. And then it's like, okay, Athena, who felt, and keep in mind the way the words is that she took pity on her, like she felt bad after she scared the shit out of this woman. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna turn you into a spider. That way you can craft and weave all the beautiful creations. But because they're webs and they're delicate, they will eventually blow away, get lost to time, so on and so forth. They'll never be. Which to be, and they make it seem like this is how spiders were created. I'm like, so you mean to tell me she had a little bitch? She threw a bitch fit and was like, okay, well, I'm gonna. You can still make your art that is apparently better than that of the gods because it was, but no one will ever really enjoy it because it would just be gone afterwards. That way, there's no threat to my like reign as the best weaver, which is the pettiest bullshit I've ever heard. Another one was like, how did I can't remember. It was either crow or ravens. It's like, how did crow or ravens become black? Because they used to be white. It was like one of them brought Athena some bad news, and she was so mad she turned all their feathers black. And I'm like, that is so unnecessary. Like that's the pettiest shit I can think of. But that's one thing I learned growing up too is like the gods are, or at least the ones in that story, like the Greek gods are assholes, which I find funny because when you play God of War, it's like you think like, oh come on, that's so unfair, and then you look at the stories that they're in, and it's like, you know what? I see what you're talking about. That no, that tracks. But it's the funniest thing too because like there were several stories where it's like you couldn't even say, and like especially in those stories, it's like sometimes the gods will visit man disguised, obviously. Sometimes they wouldn't. Like Zeus would go down there as like a flock of birds or a breeze in the wind, and then just randomly go knock up some girl, and then she'd spit out a demigod or a hero or whatnot to slay the beast. But then you have stuff where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna go down there and reveal myself to man. Boom. And it was always little things like that. Because sometimes they do stuff too, like the story of Orpheus, where his like tale of his lost love and his music moved Persephone, who was Hades' wife at the time. I say at the time, she more than likely still is. And he was like, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. Like I'll give you this task. If you all you have to do is walk out and don't look behind you. If you do, you can have your love back. And his mother, he could not wait until he just could not wait to see her so bad that right at the very entrance, turns around, loses her forever. So it's like, okay, look, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm sorry, but that was the easiest thing they could have did. Like Hades just says, leave, and you shall have what you want. Just don't look behind you. That's like people that say, don't look down, and then you immediately look down. It's like, why would you do that? I just told you not to do that. Why would you even look down? It's the dumbest thing ever. But there's so many stories like that. Was like, yeah, the guys were vengeful, spiteful, or just petty. Like even the Trojan War. I said Yeah, the Trojan War specifically. That story was like, hey, this apple is going to be given to the fairest goddess, and it will be given to you by this mortal man if he thinks you're the fairest. And then all the female gods, or at least three of them specifically, like I think Athena was one of them, Aphrodite was another, and I forgot the third one. But this whole point was just one of the other guys as being like petty or just like trying to start stuff or instigating. They were like, all right, well, who's going to be the fairest? No, and it's like, okay, I can offer you great wealth. I can offer you great victory in battle and glory. And Aphrodite goes like, I can offer you the hand of the most beautiful woman in the world to be yours. He's like, I'll take that one. Little did she fail to mention that woman was already taken, which is apparently what led to the Trojan War and the deaths of so many people. But we also got the Troy movie out of it, so who's to say who's the real winner here, right? It wasn't them. But that was also something I thought was interesting. It's just like they can literally move mountains and like just make stuff happen. But at the same time, it's also things where it's like, okay, instead of like it'll be like, oh hey, this person died, I feel bad, and then Zeus is like, oh man, I take pity on you. I'm gonna throw them into the stars to where they form a constellation. It's like that way you can always see them. It's like, can't you just go down to the underworld and bring them back? What kind of bullshit is this? It's like it would be like, oh man, my lover died before his prime. Like we were supposed to get married. Please, gods, help me. Okay, like shooting them in the air like some fireworks, and he's like, boom, there's the star right there. It's like, you mean you couldn't go get him? Like, I'm pretty sure you could walk down there, pick him up, and then walk him back out. Like, okay, so I can't. That means I can't even meet him in the afterlife now because he's a fucking constellation. Thanks, Zeus. But don't get me wrong, they're not all bad. They do have some interesting stories too. Like when you have a hero about to go on a journey, it's like I have to go slay the Gorgon. I have to go slay the Manticore. I have to go slay. It's always about slaying stuff, slaying monsters, slaying women. Like, like, it's like they have to slay something, which is just kind of like that's just how it is with like heroes. They have to, and it usually involves puncturing something, right? But no, it would be like, okay, well, how do I slay the Gorgon? And it's like the gods would be like, okay, I'm gonna help you along your journey. You know, great hero. Boom, 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 boom. Like that was basically the equivalent of giving a knight a weapon to slay the dragon. It's like, oh, you're gonna go slay the dragon? Cool. Here you go. There you go. And so on and so forth. And again, some of the greatest heroes out there. And like just because of their stuff that they did, remembered forever, and occasionally have some good ass movies made about them. Immortals was alright. I'm gonna be honest with you. It was alright, especially the scene where you get to see like all the Greek gods come out and just start fighting the Titans off, and just like, granted, yeah, they all got slaughtered at the end except for Athena and Zeus. But to be fair, Poseidon was also that dude. Poseidon was like whooping people with his trident and everything. Even at the end when he was dying, he was like holding off three people while he was getting stabbed. He was like, and he's like looking at Zeus like, leave. Because everyone else got murdered. I don't know who the motherfucker was with the knives, but that didn't work out for him, did it? But it was still cool though. And then again, it's the little things like that. The one thing about that movie that really pissed me off is when they randomly killed when Zeus like randomly just slays Ares, and I'm sitting there like, wow, you know who would have really helped you against this fight against the Titans? The god of war, who you just decided was like, no, it's like that was so stupid of you. You couldn't just like put him in timeout or something. Y'all God, you got centuries to get over this shit. But whatever. And then, ooh, so I just started looking up like some occasionally like Japanese folklore because I was curious about some of their stories because there's a lot of Japanese ghost stories that are really interesting because it shows like the level of like horror is different in the East than it is in the West, and I think it's more subtle on the Eastern side, which is why I like some of that stuff. But some of those stories are just really cool too, because some of them will be like, okay, these are oni, these are demons, these are monsters. They go around like eating people. But then it'll be like, oh yeah, and then these are some of our gods that we pray to and or worship. And like I think Amaterasu is one of them. And the reason I learned who that one was because I used to play Marvel's Capcom 3, and I think it's supposed to be a female sun goddess in the shape of like a wolf. I think Amaterasu even has their own little painting game where they run around and fight enemies with paint. I heard it was really good. And then there's a whole bunch of different lore and stuff with their things, but they're a lot more. I'm not gonna say creative. It's just like it'll be like some out of the box stuff you haven't thought of. And then there's even stuff from like what is it? Like African lore too, where it's like where it talks about certain things, which I'm still trying to look into because I just only recently learned about Anansi and like a few other ones from stuff I was looking at. And there's actually some really good YouTube channels that will go into like some of those old stories here and there to help you learn about certain people. Like I didn't realize, like even me, someone that liked reading a lot of Greek stories growing up, I didn't realize that there were so many other like characters in them. Like, granted, yeah, I knew a good chunk of the gods. I knew a decent chunk of the most popular stories, but it's the smallest stuff or like the stuff that people don't typically talk about. Well, I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of interesting. Like, there's a goddess or a titaness called like Hecate, who has like her own, who like Zeus respected so much after the whole fight with the Titans that he basically just went, I'm gonna give you parts of the air, parts of the sea, and parts of the earth. You don't rule them, but you will be highly respected in those areas specifically for you. I was like, that's really cool. And then even stuff like the only thing I'm not too familiar with in terms of like gods or mythology in terms of stuff like that. I don't know too much. Like I said, I'm just getting into some of these. I don't know much about African, Japanese, Chinese. Like I'm learning a little bit at a time, which is why I like looking into it because it's so fascinating to read these. And then also, what was the one I didn't say? Egyptian. I'm still working on Egyptian too. Like slowly but surely, I'm learning about them from their stories to what they do and so on and so forth. I think it's really interesting to learn about these, and that's another thing too, because like a lot of stuff happens where people are always like, like, do you believe? Like, because that's another question I always hear every now and again is like, well, if you keep it's when you question all this stuff, it sounds like you don't believe in God. It's like, no, no, no. You can believe in something and still question it. That's the whole point of faith and I guess free will. Like, yeah, you're able to question stuff, but you can still believe. And because again, even stuff like like when I played Mass Effect, an interesting concept I always found out too is when you can go beyond the heavens and the stars and go from planet to planet to planet, how do you believe in stuff? Because you meet two people, as far as I remember, that were straight up just Christian. Like they were like, I believe in God, which and one of them is one of your main cast characters, Ashley. You can talk with her about that in the first game, and she goes, she's like, do you believe, or do you think it's silly that like with all these aliens and other races and things that we can physically see and believe in, to still believe in God, we can go far beyond our own Earth, and you can go yes, no, so on and so forth. But even in Andromeda, one of your ship's co-pilots, I believe, that you can also romance is a firm believer in God. And she even asked you that too. She's like, do you think it's weird that, you can believe in something when you're this far in? And she's also like, well, look, I'm also a lady of science. Okay? I can prove stuff. But I am still like Christian. I still believe in God, so on and so forth. She's like, do you think that like contradicts itself, or do you like agree with me or disagree with me? And it's like, and again, they give you the option to choose on that one, and the game doesn't judge you for saying either or. It's like, all right, cool. And that's why, and I like games like that too. But it's also stuff where it's like you should always have the right to ask questions, but at the same time, you shouldn't blindly follow something unless you truly believe in your heart that what you're doing is right. because then it becomes like a whole nother can of worms. Or like, well, what about this and that and the other? It's like I was like, it's weird, but in a good way to think about. Where it's like, well, I guess maybe it's supposed to be a comforting thing. I don't know, but there's always like it always. How do I word this properly? It's like it always seems like people will find ways to twist your words or corrupt what you're saying into where what you believe in isn't even your own belief anymore. But at the same time, it's a nice feeling to know that there's something out there. So when you do eventually pass or go on, you have something to go to or something to look forward to, and so on and so forth. Where it's like, okay, this is where the final end goal is going to be for me, so on, and for other people. And there's always stuff like that's also another thing I like about like looking up mythologies too is like everyone's afterlife. I said life. Everyone's afterlife is so monumentally different in those stories. It's like, yeah, if you're a good person, you go to this spot. If you're a bad person, you go to this spot. If you're in between, you go to like limbo or purgatory or somewhere else. But then some of them will be like, okay, like I think it's like for instance, I think Anubis. It's like he takes your heart out and like weighs it on a scale, and he like weighs your sins or something, and so on and so forth to like see if it's like balances out, like if you were actually a good person or and stuff like that. And there's so many different interpretations about it that I enjoy because even in terms of like Christianity, for instance, a lot of interesting. I say interesting like I'm about to join a covenant or a cult. No, because I have don't get it twisted though. I have made friends with paganists and Satanists, and not one of those people where they like drink blood, eat virgins, and like do like heavy metal, like da, da, da. No, they were just chill people. And again, I just asked them about their questionings in their life, and I was like, "How does this work exactly? I'm curious." And they explained it to me, and I was like, "Okay." I didn't realize there were subsections. I mean, I guess there's different versions of religions too that follow very specific things. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense that there'd be subsections of other religions that also follow different things. And I even ran into I actually asked this question one time when I was in school because on the list of religions I saw atheism, and I asked the lady and I was like, hey, cool question. Why is that up there with like all the other religions and stuff? Like, because I thought atheism is you don't believe in any of that. How is that like the same as all the other ones? And at first people thought I was just like, fucking around. And she was just like, no, it's actually a very good question. She's like, it takes a lot of faith to believe in to have no faith in any of those. It's like basically it takes a lot of belief that nothing else is out there and none of that is real. Which again isn't you necessarily like belittling or bad mouthing it. It's just like that's just your own personal belief. Like I do not think there's something out there basically. And again, I was like, okay, I see what you're talking about now. Like both the matters of faith is just that one goes in one direction, the other goes in the other. And I thought that was really interesting. So I was like, okay, cool. And then, but back to the stories I was thinking of is because again, I used to look at when I was younger, I used to watch Truth or Scare. And again, I was young too. Like it was just like one of those things that randomly came on at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I found it one day when I was randomly surfing through TV. And I'm not gonna lie, occasionally I am what some would call a down bad individual. Sometimes especially when I was younger, I used to see if I saw anyone I found remotely attractive, I would latch on to them. Well, not physically latch on, but I'd be like, "Oh wow, they're pretty." And that was kind of my whole thing for like, well, not my whole thing, but like that was something I just used to do, right? Coffee. And I remember one time I was randomly watching an episode of Truth or Scare because it just popped. I was scrolling through channels and I saw it, and all I saw was I saw this cute girl back in the day, and she was holding like this little, like she had like a what's it called, like a candelabra or whatever it was called. And she was just walking around, and then she like just started discussing stuff, and she was talking about I can't remember. It was like ancient Egypt with mummies, or it was like about vampires. She was talking about like the undead, and so I was like, at first I was smitten, so I like sat down. I was like, let me watch this. Bear in mind, this is me from like I started watching this around like when did this show come out? Because this is bothering me now. Because if I remember correctly, yeah, it was Truth or Scare. It came out in 2001. That's what it was. But they were showing it on some random channel. I can't remember which channel specifically. It was like channel 101 or something. I had like stars on demand, so I had like a cable package or something. Oh, it came out in 2001. That's what it was. Oh yeah, and the lady's name was Michelle Trachtenberg, or I think she's German. Yeah, from 2001 to 2003. That's what it was. Yeah. So I was young when I saw it, but I was also kind of just like, who's this pretty slash scary lady who's like, and you see the little title card and everything. It looks so cool. And then I remember there was I started watching it. I mean, that became my routine. Same thing with like, it's like if I watch it, like, because it would be like the weekend or whatnot, and I would stay up late. And granted, this was like, and again, obviously they were reruns. These weren't like brand new episodes every time. But specifically, from what I recall, it was it would be like 1 o'clock in the morning. It would be like from 12 to 1. Around that time, I knew that show would come on. So if I was staying up late, yeah, it might have been in middle school when I watched it or something. No, it was middle school or no, 'cause middle school I was jumping back and forth. It was either when I was in the 5th grade or it was between that and the 8th grade. Between that time is when I first started watching it. Which yeah, I know I'm contradicting myself with all these gaps in my memory, but it's like I'm trying to remember because I know I was a certain age when I watched it. That's why I was like, okay. So I was around that time, but I know I wasn't in high school yet. I know that. And then I started I started watching. I got more into it because I was like, oh, okay. I got to learn about like ghosts and mummies and vampires and werewolves. And she brought up like real life examples. It's like yeah, even stuff like for instance, like the Pied Piper, or not the Pied Piper. It was like a ghost story about a guy who died in prison, and I think they took his hands, and then they say you can still hear him playing the bagpipes over a castle wall or something like that. And then she discussed lycanthropy for werewolves, stories of vampires, and in this picture right here, for instance, stories of things like succubi, who like. But the version she was saying was like one that would visit men in their dreams, or sometimes children, and then the kids or men would wake up dead the next day, and sometimes they would either have bite marks, sometimes they wouldn't. And but the thing specifically was like they would visit your dreams, which is why I started thinking of like, oh, like Freddy Krueger. And then funny, funny little side story about that too was I used to be afraid of The Grudge growing up. And the thing was, I don't even know if it was The Grudge specifically or The Ring. I never I got them mixed up too. But when I think I was like real little when I saw it, and I got so scared that I had like a crippling fear of dead ghost women for the longest time because I was like, and it's the same thing with like I believe in ghosts. I don't like ghosts. Anything I can't physically attack freaks me out because it's like, well, how am I supposed to beat it? Like, first of all, especially if it's a Japanese ghost, what if they're not Christian? I can't use a cross on something that doesn't believe in it. God damn it. But I still thought it was like a real fun thing to like think about. It was like, okay, well, how do these work? It took me a long time to actually watch one of those movies, and then when I finally watched it, I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Okay. I mean, granted, yeah, everyone dies at the end, but like, you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't as like terrifying as I thought it would have been originally. But I think it's because I'm older now. You know, I'm a man, so I'm good now. And then stuff I always thought was, oh, hold on, let me get this. Let me get the next slide going. My fault. But another thing I used to think was really cool about this too is just like Like even the stuff that came out of Greek mythology or like any of the other religions, like they give you some really creative monsters. Like yeah, you got the succubus and stuff. Like because they even have movies where you have like priests that go around with guns and shit fighting vampires and hitting them with cross combos, which is something I like doing in Dante's Inferno. Like just swinging the sight and then switching from sight to cross and just bah 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 parry. It's so good. Like the Hydra is really cool because even in stuff like when I play Dragon's Dogma, they have a Hydra, but it's basically instead of a 9-headed dragon, it's like a 9-headed or at least a 4 to 6 headed serpent. And the cool thing about that is, you shoot the head off, and the head will just grow back. But if you use fire, like a flame spell, flaming arrows, explosions, you can sear the edge off to where it can't grow back anymore. But if you don't kill the Hydra within a certain amount of time, I think it forcibly makes its heads grow back through the things, even if you burn them. So I think it's like a time limit thing. And another thing that would happen is the Hydra can eat your companions. Like he'll grab a companion of yours, and you'll see the companion in the Hydra's mouth trying to keep it from getting eaten. And granted, yeah, they're pawns, so they live to serve, and technically they won't like. Even if they die, you can technically just go get them later. In the middle of a fight, you want your companions around, so it's like, oh shit, and you have to like break the head off to keep them alive, or shoot them in the face and make them let go. Otherwise, you have to watch them swallow your companions, and it's really fucked up. And then you see the story of so I was gonna say Hercules, but I think his Greek name was Heracles. We had to fight the Hydra. He killed all of them except for one head, which was immortal, and I think he trapped it under a large boulder. It was a boulder or a mountain, from what I recall. Oh yeah, and then this one is a Chimera, another great Greek creature, which I'm gonna be real. I always dug body of a lion, head of a goat, tail of a snake, and it's like, yeah, another good. And he's the first like big creature you get to fight in the game for Dragon's Dogma, and you can see like a black chimera later on. And it looks so sick. Oh yeah, I did have someone draw a succubus one time for me, and I made their skin blue because I was like, I don't know, demons, blue pale skin. That sounds about right. But that was also when I was working on a story about a Grim Reaper. But that was also because, again, I was on my Dante's Inferno kick. So I was like, yeah, he can explore hell. Why not? And I'm like, nah, it's too similar-ish. But it was it might have been different reasons, but he still had been going through hell. So I was like, nah, I'll hold off on that. Maybe work on that some other time. And it's oh shit. Sorry. My bad. I forgot I had my alarm set. Oopsie daisy. Just gonna cut that off. See, that's what happens when you go into work at irregular times. You got too many different alarms that you forget to turn off. Okay, now to be fair, this is a tiefling, or at least one that I bought a long time ago. Not necessarily a demon, so it doesn't really have to do with religion-ish, but it's loosely based on it. Okay, like D&D, like some of the creatures in there are based on like creatures you've seen before. So yeah, a demonic race, I feel that falls under a certain category where it's like, I mean, yeah, because then you could also hit them with holy items, and if it does extra damage, then it's like, yeah, okay, there's that kind of demon. But again, there's also stuff like that too, where it's like there's so many interesting variations on like monsters throughout the world because they change depending on cultures, religion, and mythologies. Like vampires technically exist in a lot of folklore, so do zombies. Go figure. But they're all different across like other facets of like places. Like, are they like the George A. Romero or Night of the Living Dead zombies where they walk around eating flesh and going, "Grrr"? No. But like even in like I think it was like Haiti or something, they have their own versions of zombies, which I believe are more like what's the word? They're not brain dead, but they're more like thralls, for instance, like a vampire servant. Like they're like walking zombies. They don't really talk, interact. They just do what they're told. Like they're not like the ones that go in like, like no, no, no. But that also brings me into other stuff too, like magic, for instance. Like, because again, it's another thing where people believe certain things. Like, okay, well, some people claim to be psychic, clairvoyant. Some people say like witch doctors and shamans and all this spiritualism stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, these like magic chakra rocks will align your center or whatnot. All you have to do is like chant with them or whatnot. But then it'll just be like some people will be like, yeah, I can like manipulate fire, I can float or levitate or fly, walk on water, teleport, go invisible. Like now granted, some of that stuff is very hard to believe. So it's like, I would have to physically see you do it to be like, okay, I'm a believer now. I'm not gonna be like, oh wait, you can only turn invisible when no one's looking at you. Oh, okay, 1 second. Like, no, that's stupid. But again, that's also again, stuff like that is also like steeped in religious beliefs because again, stories about gods and goddesses doing crazy or impossible-ish things is like, yeah, that sounds about right. But that's also the thing too. Is like, do I like for instance, like, do I believe in curses? Yes and no. I have a very like my family is kind of superstitious at times, so I feel like by association, yeah, I have to believe in it, but at the same time, it's kind of just like, I'll be all right. I'll live. You know, I'm just gonna let this run on random. It's fine. I can keep talking while I do. Coffee. Mm. Also, if you're wondering who the succubus is, you keep seeing in this on these photos, that is Lady Sisyphine. Do I have much of a story for her at the moment? Not yet. Well, that's a lie. I do and I don't. I'm working on it. As for the tiefling angels right there, don't have one for him either. That guy originally was named Colas. He's supposed to be he's technically a Reaper, but not like in the like Bleach Soul Reaper kind of thing. No, he's actually the Grim Reaper because in the story idea I was coming up with, he doesn't kill the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper can't physically die because he's death. Like, yeah, to pass the mantle, you have to willingly let yourself get killed. And because he was there, he accidentally killed him, which turned him into the new Reaper, obviously involuntarily. So then he goes on his own little adventure, which is where he wants to Lady Sisyphine, who yes also is the blue lady here. But at the same time, he also comes across one of her. Ooh, this one, I like this one. So this one specifically was based on an oni, I believe, and also a bit of a cyclops that me and my friend came up with. Obviously, he's robotic because mechas. Ooh, really cool. But again, I do like the I love the colors in this one. And again, it's the little details too, like the flames going outwards and like, fading away with the further away it is from the main source of fire and all the vibrant lights and everything. It's so good. Like his teaching the detail is mwah, lovely. Mm. But at the same time, it's like so many fascinating things to think about. But at the same time, it always turns into a situation where people go like, "Well, is any of it real?" It's like, and it'll be like, people can be like, "Oh, well, I can prove and disprove this, that, and the other." It's like sometimes it's not even. I don't necessarily believe in the sense of like that you have to justify everything that's real. Like if you're trying to convince someone of something, then yes, you're gonna very much have to prove to them why it's right. But at the same time, it's one of those things of just like some of these stories are just that stories, and sometimes it's like, okay, these are tales. Like for instance, the stuff I've been telling you about. Some of those are like Greek tragedies, where it's like These are stories you just pass on to other people. Sometimes there's a message behind them, sometimes it's not. It's an entertainment thing at the end of the day. Whether or not you choose to believe it is up to you. And at the end, and there's also stuff too. Just kind of like, yeah, this would be really cool in theory, but at the same time, it's like with all these different stories, beliefs, mythologies, religions going around, the question that's always going to come up is, so who's right? Because they can't all be real. Not every one of these people created the sun. It's like, then it just becomes a story of like, well, who's right and who's wrong? It's like, who cares? Like, well, I mean, yeah, that sounds very defeating, but it's like, just enjoy them for what they're worth at the moment. If Because think about it like this: if the sky ever splits open and a big ass head, hand, or body come out, and it looks like one of the guys you're familiar with, then tell you what, that person was right. Or if they come down from the heavens and go, yeah, so I'm real, all the other ones are not, Nina, Nina, Nina. It's like, okay, fine, fine. Ooh. One thing I do enjoy though is the ghost stories that come out of some of these things too, because there's a book series I remember. It's like scary stories to tell in the dark. They even had one for Texas that I looked into one time. And some of those are actually kind of chilling. Like the photos on them are scary. The imagery is really good. The Like there was one about a woman who was waiting for her husband to come back from war, and he did. So she gets on the horse with them. She's so ecstatic, and they start riding off together. And then he takes her to where he was buried, and then she gets buried there with him. And it's like, or so and that's how the story. And she gets buried alive, basically with the corpse of her husband. And it's like Ooh, but in terms of like my favorite stories, though, I did enjoy the Underwood series in terms of like what they did for vampires and Lycans. I thought that was fun. Like it's like a war between them. I haven't. Oh god, my favorite one though. I would definitely say the first one because the fourth. What was it? Which one is the fourth one that had the big ass Lycan that's like 20 goddamn feet tall? That one was nuts. And then she also had a daughter ish, sort of technically. But then they also allegedly killed off her boyfriend in the first part of the movie. Until it turns out, like he would spoiler alert, he was still alive. So I was like, God damn it! But I would say, ooh, a classic story would definitely be what's it called? Not Bram Stoker's Dracula. Although I did try reading the book, I didn't realize how like stupid I was until I started reading like old school dialogue like that. No, but it was it was like an old. It was like the old, not the black and white one either. It was specifically the. This is gonna bother me now. It wasn't like. God damn it! Who was the guy in that one too? I cannot let this go now. I'll figure it out later. God damn it! But it was specifically like that's why I really like Dracula because his whole thing is like yeah vampires can be scary blood sucking monsters. He made the role of Dracula way more engrossing. Like, even if there was specific rules where vampires is, okay, can't be out during the daytime, have to sleep in a coffin during the day, can't walk across a body of a bridge or a body of open water, can't go in your house unless you invite them. His whole thing, which made him scary, was he was vampires at their most, what's the word, seductive, I guess. Like he can entrance people make them follow his will. And then at the same time, it'll be like, okay, like he like it's like he kind of like worms his way into your thoughts to where it's like now you have to do what he says, and if you don't, well, and then some of the stories are also different. It'll be like, okay, he's either a horrifying monster or he's really, really like handsome and like bewildering and like super cool. See, I would say like I love werewolves, but Dracula is my favorite like old school monster. Besides like Frankenstein, because even with Frankenstein, his stuff is more tragic than anything else. Because it's just like he was brought forth by a mad scientist in a world that doesn't want him, and he has no place in the world. And I've seen people talk about the older movies too, and they brought up some nice symbolism and things like that. Well, I'm like, okay, that's actually really interesting. And his whole thing is like he's not a monster by trade. They just branded him one to the point where even when he tries to be happy with people, it doesn't work out. And then he ends up like at one point, like they make him a bride specifically made for him, and then nothing. They just straight up go, yeah, no. It's like she sees him, is immediately terrified of him to the point where Frankenstein's like, "Well, is that bullshit? All right, I need to be gone from this world that you forced me into. Goodbye, doctor." And then the whole thing collapses and I guess blows up. And I'm just sitting there like, I feel so bad for him. Anyways, back onto Dante's Inferno. I say, no, no. That game is still very fun though. Like despite like its stuff that it doesn't have, like in terms of replayability, yeah, you can always upgrade your stuff and make yourself a walking beast. But because I can't get online and try the other stuff, I'm kind of upset about that. But it's whatever. I just realized too, God of War Ascension had multiplayer. Dante's Inferno also apparently had multiplayer. So it did it first. From a game series is not even a part of. That would be sick though, like a co-op God of War game in the version of the old school. You just go around beating the shit out of enemies together. That'd be sick. But they're not gonna do that. They ain't going back to that style, which is a shame. What else was there that I wanted to talk about? Let me pause it for a second. Give me some more coffee. Ooh, let me think. Talked about that. Talked about that. Talked about. Ooh, that's something to think about. My favorite ghost. Hmm. I've seen a lot over the years. But in terms of like my favorite ghost story, oh, that's a tough one. All right, this is gonna sound really, really stupid. Like, I mean, I could just be like, oh yeah, Kayako, Sadako, any of them. It's like, no. If I had to specifically pick a ghost, it's not gonna be Casper either. Before y'all just go, like, oh, he's gonna go for a child friendly. No. I'm gonna say, ooh, okay. Do I want a malicious ghost or do I want a regular? No. All right, tell you what. My favorite ghost, because I don't think this counts as a ghost, because technically I was gonna say Monster House at first because that movie is so good, and technically the house is possessed by the ghost of the guy's dead wife. But at the same time, it's like nah, because I guess like if you're thinking like a haunted figure, whew, I'm gonna say I got it. Now again, this might sound like cheating, but from I was gonna say Three Stages of Hell. Fucking goddamn it! What's a Christmas movie again? That has the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. I would say them specifically because because rather than being like a spirit, like a vengeful spirit or anything like that. Because granted, yeah, I could also because again, if I had to say a specific ghost that's a good vengeful spirit, I would say Ghost Rider because spirit of vengeance, right? No, but I say them specifically because, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of these ghost stories are like cautionary tales and whatnot. The ghosts you see in that movie specifically are the cautionary tale because they warned Scrooge in advance multiple times. A Christmas Carol, that's what it is. And they're like, look, change your ways. I'm gonna show you the past, who you were before. I'm gonna show you the present and who you are now and how you're affecting everyone. And then I'm gonna show you your future and what happens with that. And it's like, okay. And plus, there've been so many different interpretations for that movie. Like one I remember watching a lot too was the Daffy Duck one, where he's Scrooge and he gets visited by all the ghosts and everything. I thought that was a nice little one. And then, hmm, I've seen a lot of horror movies growing up too. Like not even just like the B. I like watching B-rated horror movies, but there's also something oddly satisfying about watching things like. Again, I don't really like. I like slashes and stuff, but sometimes the occult or scary stuff, like when with ghosts haunting people and stuff, is also fun. Grave Encounters wasn't that bad. I used to watch. I watched. Was Haunted House on Haunted Hill? Or no, Return to Haunted House on Haunted Hill. That was the one I watched, and that one was kind of yeah, that was a weird one. But there was another one too. I think it's called like Ghost Ship. What was it? Where people were getting haunted by the ghost on the well, on the ship, and that was one. I never saw I Know What You Did Last Summer. I never understood that one, so I never watched it. But there was another one specifically that I'm trying to think of now, and it was what was it? It was actually no, I wouldn't even count that as like a ghost movie. Never mind. Whew. Let's see. Oh, let me. Sorry, forgot to unpause it. Whoops. Hmm. And the cool thing is, there's so many creative stories too, or how some of these go, where it's like, oh yeah, no, if these things get a hold of you, it's not just necessarily like, it won't be stuff like, oh, they'll just kill you. It's like, no, 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 they won't do none of that. But what will happen is that they will outright, meh. It's like they're like rip your soul out through your rectum, or be like, or they're like pick your teeth out or whatnot, like witches or stuff like that. Which I always thought witches and shamans and like stuff like that was the same thing, but they're worded differently. So it's like, okay. Hmm. Ooh, now that I think about it too, there was a I'm not gonna say Christmas counts as like a religious thing, although like technically like Christ is in the name for Christmas, I guess, but like not really. Because then he's gonna be like, well, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, yes and no, sort of. It's kind of like its own thing, but I just thought of something too, because y'all remember the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy? How they had their own little holiday specials. They had one for Halloween. They had one for Christmas. I just remember too. It was Santa was voiced by a specific person. I'm trying to remember his name, but I remember that movie or that special release was really really fun. And like the beginning too, you got the voice of Graham saying like a holiday rhyme to start off the intro, and then you see him behind Santa at the end, and he does the ha 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 ha. That was so much fun. And then that's one thing I liked about the old cartoons too, was like they never really like granted they didn't talk too much about religion unless you went to like PBS Kids or something, but they had like they all had like that was like a collective thing they would do. Like it'd be like ho 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 everybody like for this especially for like Halloween and Christmas. They're like we're gonna show you some scary like episodes all day long. Here's a Halloween themed version of like the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, like Chowder, Ben 10, this and this. And it's like same thing with Christmas. Like they all had, and it would be like a non-stop setting for all these holidays to mess around with. And I'm just kind of like, okay, okay, I dig it, I dig it. It's fun. And that was something I just thought was so interesting. Was like, yeah. But again, even the holidays themselves are based on some form of religion. Because I think, what was it, Halloween used to be like a pagan holiday or something? And they used to have jack o' lanterns outside or stuff or something similar to ward off evil spirits. And then you would leave them like instead of giving them candy, you would specifically leave them like some form of an offering where it's like, yeah, that'd be really fun. Which I think is interesting. And there's so many stories you can which I mean they kind of teach a life lesson in a sense. Some of them are just there, but then some stories you can read about in religions where it's like, Yeah, no, this is like, and sometimes they're just really creative little stories. It could be little jabs at something. They could be like, hey, you know what this is? Well, what about this? And it would just be like, or it would be a story that has like an interesting solution, and there's so many different like, how do I say it? Not necessarily interpretations, but like it feels sorry, there's a fly in my face. Like it just feels like its own little thing sometimes, like its own self-contained nugget of wisdom that you can pass along, or sometimes just something like like it would be a story where it's like you remember the story of the goat and the scorpion or whatnot. It's like what? It's like no, but go on, and then they tell you the story. I mean, hell, even some of the well, actually, yeah, they people have said before that some stories like they can have some sort of symbolism derived from them in terms of like religion. Like think of like the gingerbread man, for instance. I don't know what the symbolism would be there, but like people always say those old nursery rhyme stories are based on other things too. Which my thing is, if you can draw something from a story that you believe in, more power to you. But then sometimes it can be as simple as just like, what are you talking about? This is just like a this, that, and the other. There's nothing to be drawn from this. This is just like a kid's story. It's like true, true. But like, think of like, what is it? London bridges falling down. Not Red Rover, and Ring Around the Rosie, and like a few other things like that. People always say it's like, oh, well, that's based on this, that, and the other. This is based on this, this, and this. It's like fair enough. Because even some games that I've played too that talk about like religion in a sense are very interesting to read into. Because like for instance, like there's a game I'm terrified of that I still love, Fear and Hunger. Like I always look at people playing it, I look at guides on it every now and again. I still haven't beat it myself, but they make it look so easy. But they even have their own set of religion for the characters where it's like, okay, well, hmm, there's two main gods technically. There's like Sylvian, who is the goddess of love, fertility, all this, that, and the other, and then her husband, in a sense, who is Grogaroth, who is like the god of death, destruction, and whatnot. Like he destroys life, so she creates life. There's no malicious intent behind anything that they do to an extent when they're doing that, but at the same time, it's also very like it's just how they are. And the thing is, it even reflects on the people who like worship them. Where it's like Lady Sylvian, she loves humanity, but she knows that they could never love her in the way that she loves them. So her version of what love is becomes twisted and warped at certain points, and it's like even the highest of beings, to an extent, are still affected by those around them, even if it's on like a minute scale. And the cool thing is, you can fight them in game. You can challenge some of them in game. You can actually meet Gorgoroth and have a discussion with him. He's like, yeah, no, this isn't actually me that you're seeing. If you saw my actual physical form, it's like, you ever see Darkseid? He's one of the old gods. His whole thing is like, when you see Darkseid in the movies or TV shows and he's beating the shit out of Superman or Superwoman or Supergirl, he just don't like Kryptonians. But he's just like wrecking people and it's like, oh yeah, I beat him. It's like, yes and no. Yeah, you stopped him, but that's technically not Darkseid. This is an avatar form of him because his real form would destroy the universe if he were ever to try to enter it. So yeah, that wouldn't work. But then it's the same thing. He's like, yeah, if you saw my true form, your mind would snap because again, you're just a regular human. I am leagues above you, which again is an interesting thing to think about too. Because even in stories where it's like, because even in stories where it's like when they talk about mortals meeting gods or whatnot, like sometimes gods go in human form to protect the humans around them, specifically because it's like, yeah, if you saw me in my true form, you would die. Because I think even Zeus, I remember this story. One of his lovers wanted to see him wearing his full armor, like a full plate of armor he had. He said no, she wouldn't leave it alone. So reluctantly, he put the armor on, and he was so bright and dazzling in that armor that she burst into flames. Yeah, that one was weird. But it's the same. It's a thing where it's like, okay, But then you have stories of like Christianity, like for instance, Jesus casually walking around amongst people. Like, granted, yeah, he was being worshipped and prayed to and like talked to and stuff in the stories and interacted with. But at the same time, he was also just casually performing miracles, walking on water, turning blood to wine, all that other like good shabazz that he'd be doing, right? And such a, and again, it's also a thing of like how much of more mortals is derived from this, but at the same time, it's also something to think about of like because people always go like oh religion is like man made or whatnot. It's like I was like I think it's it's something to think about though, because when people put gods on a pedestal, where it's like, okay, you should never just casually, you should always like defer to them with like some form of praise, or you gotta talk to them like, they're that high above you. You gotta be respectful. You gotta do this, that, and the other. And then some stories are like, no, you can just casually talk to them. Like they're not all like super, they're all like super chill or high above you. Like, and you can see that in anime too when you watch certain things and you get to meet certain characters. Like think of like Konosuba. Some of the goddesses hold themselves up in very like pristine ways when you meet them. Like you're taken aback. It's like, oh wow, this is beauty and grace incarnate. Like these are like divine beings. But then you got other anime where they're like childish or very crude or very like they act like they to an extent act like people, very arrogant people, or they'd be like tiny chibis or lolis or whatnot, and they'd be like pocket-sized people. And she's like, and they'll be like, I'm actually hundreds of thousands of years old, mortal. And then you look at them, and it's like, how come you don't raise up over my kneecap? Like, why are you so short? Even when I play like Xenoverse and you got Dragon Ball Z, the guys in that one are all over the place. You got people like the Supreme Kai of Time, who is centuries old, looks like a tiny child. You got people like the regular Supreme Kai, or what's his name, Shin, who does kind of look like some form of a deity. But then you got the Elder Supreme Kai, who looks old as shit. And it's like, but then you got people like Beerus and Whis, who are angels and gods of destruction in their own right. But then you got someone like Xena, who is just a tiny little thing of destruction that can wipe out universes. And it's like, okay. But again, these are just creative interpretations on what people would assume, like, I guess you could say deities are, which, fair enough. Sometimes they're, holier than thou, incorruptible beings of pure bliss, or I would say just power and authority, but then sometimes they're just down to earth, chill people. Like for everyone like Zeus and stuff, who everyone reveres and or fears, you got people like Dionysus who was just like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna host parties and drink wine and enjoy life. Like, which again, it's like fair enough. Bless my beer and all that. You're good. But it's but again, that's it depends on also like when you tell these stories, how much of because again, you could be like, well, how much of yourself do you put in these stories? It's like, because again, it's not like you were there at the time to be like, oh yeah, this is what happened, like when the stars were formed or whatnot. Because again, it's not like people wrote this stuff down back in the day. Granted, they did later on, but earlier or before, afterwards, it was all like word of mouth stuff, just passed around me like, yeah, okay, do that, do kind of thing. But everyone has their own little spin on it, which is also fun because you think of stories like these, and it's like, when you look at it, it's like, well, what's to stop me from making my own story about? Nothing really. You can make it like that. You can base it on the stories you've heard. You can make it its own little thing. But hmm, it's all a matter of belief at the end of the day. It's either you believe or you don't. And if you don't believe it, you don't have to hate it. You don't have to even dislike it. Like you can look at these and think like, oh, these are really fascinating concepts. Or you can look at it and be like, nah, I believe with this, like in its entirety, if of my heart and everything else, this is what it is and how it's going to be. And nothing wrong with that. Ooh, you know what I want? Oh, I really want to do now. Ah, this would be so interesting to do. But sorry, I want to jump into Conan again. Not like the PS2 Conan, like specifically Conan Exile, because I haven't played that in so long. But I think that one also has its own lore on the gods, which, if I remember correctly, I want to. I see, because he's a barbarian. I want to say. Actually, no, because there's different sections of that area too. I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna see, because if they have like a codex or something that explains that shit, then I'm all for it. Because like even Mass Effect, with as scientific as it is, has their own versions of beings that they basically worship as like these are those kinds of people. Because no, everyone and the mother wouldn't shut up about how advanced the Protheans are and all these other things. It's kind of just like you would think they were gods among men until you actually meet like one. And granted, he's a cool character and all, but it's like pretty sure this bullet will still do something to him. But it's like, yeah, you never know. Oh, that would. Oh, you know what? There was another game I saw a while ago. Not no no not Bayonetta. Although to be fair, you do fight angels in that game, which I find funny because none of the angels look like the biblical. Well, I say biblical, but like I guess you could say the Hollywood version of angels. They look more like the biblical versions, which are all over the fucking place. And it's just like if you see it, it's one of the things of like you wouldn't want to see one of them in a dark alley because I mean, granted, it'd probably be horrifying, but you know. Although again, it's its own interpretation on what it thinks stuff is, which I'm all for. Oh, something that would be really fun. Let me think. Let me think. Let me think. Let me think. Ooh. Ah, I'm trying to remember the name of the game too. It was see now I'm drawing a blank. It was called damn it, I had it on my phone too. It was a game where you specifically played as like a series of gods because they had all kinds. It was like gods. It was like Greek gods. It was like Greek, Egyptian. Because they had Zeus, obviously. They had Athena. Then they had like Anubis and like a few other people. This is really bothering me now. What is the name of this? No. It was not Shadow Fight. Although that game is fun. Oh yeah, the time I got reincarnated as a slime. That was also fun. I like Milam and all of them. They're just a blast. Oh god, this is really gonna piss me off now. I cannot find my game. I suppose I have to look for it later. Man. Alright, well, I'm gonna call it here for now. I think I'm gonna tap down stories of mythology and religion for the moment. But, this is kind of my excuse to talk about those because they are steeped in something. So I was like, well, they fall under. I was like, I mean, granted, I could just be like, oh, it is fall under mythology, and I'm like, yes and no, but like, y'all get it. I'm over here just rambling now. I'm sorry. All right, time to finish my coffee. Oh, that's delicious. Mm. All right, enough of that. All right, guys, thank y'all for listening. I'll see you around. If you have any like stories of religion or mythology you'd like to share, just leave them in the comments because I actually want to read them over because, in case I missed something. Peace.